He thought he was proving a point. He thought the young waitress didn't deserve a single cent of his money. So instead of a tip, he left her a note, a cruel one meant to humiliate her. But just minutes later, as he stepped out into the parking lot and saw something on the ground, everything changed. And that single moment would make him wish he could take back every bitter word he'd ever written. This is the story of how a simple act of arrogance turned into a lesson he could never forget. A story that reminds us, sometimes karma doesn't wait years to arrive. Sometimes it comes before you even leave the parking lot. Please comment where you're watching us from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notification. It was a slow Wednesday afternoon at a small diner just off Highway 19. You know, the kind that smells like coffee and pancake syrup, with red vinyl booze and flickering neon lights that buzz louder than the chatter inside. Behind the counter was Lila, a 26-year-old waitress with tired eyes and a smile she wore like armor. She'd been working double shifts for weeks, trying to cover her rent and her younger brother's medication. That day was supposed to be just another long one until he walked in. Martin Cole, 47 years old, a sales manager for a local auto dealership. Clean suit, shiny watch, Bluetooth headset still blinking from his last call. He looked like a man who had money and wanted you to know it. He ordered black coffee, eggs over easy, and bacon crispy but not burnt, he emphasized without looking up from his phone. Lila nodded, scribbled down his order, and moved away unaware that in less than an hour, this man would turn her day into a nightmare. When the food came out, Martin barely looked up. He was too busy complaining over a Bluetooth call about someone messing up the quarterly numbers again. Lila set the plate down gently, gave her usual warm, "Here you go, sir," and walked away. A few minutes later, she heard that sharp, dismissive snap of fingers. Martin was waving her over. "Martin, this bacon's too hard. I said crispy, not rock solid." She apologized and offered to replace it, but he cut her off. "Never mind. It's fine. Just try to listen next time, all right?" Her cheeks flushed, but she kept her voice calm. "Yes, sir." That tiny exchange, just a few seconds long, was enough to set the tone for the rest of the meal. He didn't know her struggles. He didn't care that she'd been on her feet since dawn, or that her last tip was a handful of coins. To him, she was invisible behind an apron. When Martin finished his meal, he flagged her down again. She approached cautiously, unsure what was coming this time. "Martin, can I get the check?" Lila smiled faintly. "Of course." She dropped the bill on the table, $17.43, and stepped back to tend to another customer. Martin reached into his wallet, pulled out a 20, and then paused. That's when the idea hit him, the petty, mean little idea that would soon come back to haunt him. He flipped over the receipt and scribbled something on the back before sliding it under the plate. When he left, he didn't look back, but the smirk on his face said it all. A few minutes later, Lila came by to clear the table. She lifted the plate, expecting at least $1 or $2. Instead, she saw his note. Scrawled in thick black pen were the words, "Here's a tip. Learn how to do your job right. No money. Just that." She froze, eyes stinging, throat tight. In the middle of a half-empty diner, that note felt louder than a shout. For a moment, she just stood there. Then she folded the receipt, tucked it into her apron, and forced herself to keep working. Because that's what you do when you're used to people like him. Outside, Martin strutted toward his car, a brand new black Mercedes. He unlocked it, slid inside, and checked his phone. That's when he noticed something strange on the passenger seat. A small leather wallet. Not his. He frowned and picked it up. Inside was a handful of cash, a few cards, and an ID. It belonged to Lila Henderson, the waitress. He must have grabbed it by accident when he took his receipt, not realizing she'd set her wallet down while clearing the table beside him. For a second, he thought about returning it. But then that smug grin returned. "Serves her right," he muttered. He tossed it on the seat and started the engine. But as he pulled out of the parking lot, something on the ID caught his eye. A small laminated card behind her license is a medical card. Emergency contact, Evan Henderson, age 8. It listed insulin dosage, blood sugar monitoring instructions. Martin froze. A sinking realization washed over him. Evan was her little brother, diabetic. And that wallet That bit of cash inside might have been what she needed to pick up his insulin today. He gripped the steering wheel, the note he'd written replaying in his mind like a cruel echo. Here's a tip. Learn how to do your job right. Suddenly, it didn't feel clever anymore. It felt vile. He hit the brakes, heart pounding. He had to fix this. He turned around fast. When he pulled back into the diner's lot, her car was gone. The neon lights flickered in the window, but her section was empty. He ran inside, out of breath. The waitress, Lila. Where is she? The other server looked up, startled. She left about 5 minutes ago. Said she had to get to the pharmacy before it closed. Martin's chest tightened. He grabbed his phone and checked the time, 5:48 p.m. The pharmacy closed at 6. He sped off again, wall in hand. Traffic lights blurred past. He kept glancing at the clock, praying he'd make it. When he finally reached the pharmacy, he spotted her car parked out front, old, dented, barely holding together. Relief flooded him. He pulled into the lot, clutching her wallet. But as he stepped out, he saw her through the window, crying at the counter. The pharmacist was shaking his head. She was holding a prescription bag. Empty. The card reader wasn't working. She didn't have enough in cash. And her brother's insulin refill was being put back on the shelf. Martin's stomach dropped. The note, the smug smirk, all of it crashing back on him like a wave of guilt. He hurried toward the door, but just as his hand touched the handle, sirens. A car screeched across the parking lot. 2 paramedics jumped out. They weren't heading for the pharmacy. They were heading for the car beside it. A small boy was slumped in the passenger seat. Martin froze, realization hitting him like ice. It was her car, and the boy was Evan. The air outside the pharmacy was thick with sirens, shouting, and the smell of burnt rubber from Martin's tires. Martin, shouting, "I have her wallet. I have her money. Please someone tell them." But no one was listening. Lila was kneeling beside her brother's body, trembling hands pressed to his chest as the paramedics worked. The boy's name was Evan, just 8 years old. He'd gone in a hypoglycemic shock while waiting in the car. Martin's stomach turned. This wasn't supposed to happen. He just wanted to teach someone a lesson. Now, all he could see was a child on the pavement, pale and still. One of the paramedics shouted for a glucose injection. Another tried to keep Lila calm. Martin wanted help to say something. Anything, but every step he took toward her felt heavier than the last. When he tried to hand over the wallet, a police officer stopped him. "Sir, please back away." "Martin, this is hers. I found it. She needs it." But the officer didn't seem to care. At that moment, Martin realized how it must have looked. A well-dressed man clutching a woman's wallet, hovering near an emergency scene. He stepped back, voice cracking. "Please, I didn't mean to." The words barely left his mouth before the ambulance door slammed shut. Lila climbed in beside her brother, her tear-streaked face never turning toward him. And as the sirens faded down the street, Martin was left standing in the parking lot holding her folded apron note in one trembling hand. That night, Martin didn't go home. He sat in his car in the dark, outside the diner. The lights were off. The place was closed. Through the window, he could still see the booth where it had all started. He unfolded the note, the same one he'd left her hours earlier. The words looked crueler now than he remembered. "Here's a tip. Learn how to do your job right." He crumpled it in his fist, but the damage was already done. The waitress he'd mocked was probably sitting in a hospital, praying her brother would wake up. Martin couldn't sleep. Every noise, every distant siren made his heart jump. By morning, his hands were shaking as he drove to the hospital to try and make things right. The woman at the front desk looked him over when he asked for Lila Henderson's room. "Receptionist, are you family?" "Martin, no. I'm just someone who needs to apologize." She hesitated, then pointed him toward the pediatric wing. "Room 312. When he reached the door, he saw Lila through the glass, sitting beside her brother's bed, holding his hand. Evan's small frame was covered in tubes. Monitors beeped rhythmically, a cruel reminder that he was still fighting. Martin stood frozen for a long moment. He didn't know how to knock. How do you apologize when your mistake nearly costs a child his life? Finally, he opened the door. Lila looked up instantly. Her eyes were red, but her expression was calm, eerily calm. "Lila, you shouldn't be here." He swallowed. "I know. I wanted to bring this." He held out her wallet. I found it in my car. I must have. Lila, coldly, we didn't find it. You took it. He froze. No, I swear I didn't mean to. She shook her head. I don't care what you meant. My brother almost died tonight. Her words hit like a blade, quiet, sharp, final. Martin tried to speak again, but she cut him off. Lila, you want to help? Leave? He hesitated, then placed the wallet gently on the side table. As he turned to go, he heard her whisper almost to herself. He wouldn't have collapsed if I hadn't come back for my wallet. He paused. Wait, what do you mean came back? But she didn't answer. Her eyes stayed fixed on her brother's face, tears silently running down her cheeks. Those words stuck with him as he drove away. Came back for my wallet. But how could she have come back for it if he had taken it? Something didn't make sense. That night, Martin sat at his kitchen table, replaying every second of that afternoon. The moment she cleared the table. The note. The wallet on the seat. He kept telling himself he was sure it had been an accident, but a creeping doubt began to form. What if it wasn't? He pulled up the diner's Google listing and called the number. A young busboy answered. Martin, hey, was there a wallet left behind yesterday? Belonged to one of your waitresses, Lila Henderson. Busboy, yeah. She said she dropped it behind a booth, but found it after closing. What? Martin's chest tightened. After closing? Busboy, yeah. Weird thing, though. She said she saw someone leaving the diner, holding it earlier. Thought maybe they'd taken it by mistake. Guess she was wrong. It was under a napkin the whole time. Martin's mind went blank. If the wallet had been in the diner all along, then whose wallet had been in his car? He ran to his car, heart pounding. The wallet was still on the passenger seat, the one he thought belonged to Lila. He flipped it open again. Inside, cash, cards, and ID. But this time he looked closer. The name on the ID wasn't Lila Henderson. It was Evan Cole, his own son. Martin froze. The room spun. Evan, his son from a past marriage. The boy he hadn't seen in over 3 years. How could his old ID be in this wallet? And why did it look so new, like it had been placed there recently? He turned over the medical card he'd seen before. It was identical, except the handwriting on it wasn't his ex-wife's. It was Lila's. A cold realization crept in. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't karma. Someone had wanted him to find that wallet. Someone had wanted to teach him a lesson. Martin stared at the ID in disbelief. He flipped it again and saw something scrawled faintly in the pen across the back. Just 3 words. You owe him. His hands began to shake. How did Lila know his son's name? And what did she mean to owe him? Outside his window, a car engine started. Headlights flashed once in the driveway, then disappeared into the night. Martin's phone buzzed. Unknown number. One new message. He opened it. It was a photo of the same wallet. And beneath it, a single text. This isn't over. To be continued in part 2. Please like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notification. Thanks for watching.